surprise, I'm up here with you. You didn't know this was happening. So, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but the church has been going on as a church for 10 years. 10 years for a church plant that, I don't know if you guys realize how rare that is for a church plant to make it to 10 years. On top of that, Pastor Mike has been our pastor for the entire 10 years. So not only does the church have a 10-year anniversary, but he has a 10-year anniversary with the church. What you guys may not know as well is for the first 6 years, he was doing it for free. So he was pastoring a growing church, a thriving church, discipling, pouring into your life, and he was doing it while working a full-time job. So it's huge. It's amazing. So it's a feat in and of itself that when he planted the church, he did it with faith that God would provide and all that would happen. So, with this being the 10-year anniversary, we wanted to gift him and his wife and his son a 5-day vacation, all inclusive. So that's exciting. Cheer. He hasn't gone on a genuine raw vacation. It's whenever he goes somewhere cool, it's always because he's going to prepare, he's going to a church conference, or he's going to invest in someone else, or he's never just going on vacation just to relax and chill and do that. So what's exciting is after 10 years, he gets to do that. So through many gifts in the church, we were able to get that done for you, and we can plan when and where and all that later. So, okay. Love you, man.
Love you.
We love you. We all chipped in, and yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you, guys.
Surprise.
Definitely a surprise.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, cool. Okay, see ya.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, guys. Definitely not planning for that, so I guess I have to preach now. Man, that's amazing. So, yeah, well, let's pray on that note. God, thank you for the opportunity to do this. Man, 10 years has definitely flown by. We've seen so many incredible things that you've done, Lord, and we have been able to just basically follow along and follow behind your lead. And I'm so grateful for this group of people, God, our leadership, our elders, our pastors, and the favor that you have given this church. And it's truly a privilege for me to be able to pastor this church and be in this group of people. So thank you for this. This is going to be an incredible time away from my family. Lord, it's exciting for me. Hopefully it's somewhere out of Indiana. That would be great. And so we're just looking forward to it, Lord. So today we're walking through doing what you did, Jesus. And I know that sounds really daunting, but they're going to make it a little bit more simple, and we're going to see what that looks like practically. We love you, Lord, and ask these things in your son's name. Amen. I really am thrilled. I hate surprises more than anything in the world. I know. And so if I am not showing lots of emotion, I promise you this is amazing. So, Joel, we're going to meet tomorrow. All right, so so today we have baptisms, okay? Now, baptisms are an opportunity for you to celebrate like crazy, because here's what the Bible says. When somebody moves from death to life, all of the angels in heaven rejoice, all right? So we like to practice that here on earth. So we're going to move here after I'm done preaching here in just a few minutes. We're going to move the baptismal right over here. It's going to be center stage. You're going to see people get baptized. And when they come out of the water, what they're resembling is moving from death to life. And so when they come out of the water, your response is going to be a crazy celebration like you've never celebrated before. I don't care who your favorite team is, that you score, jump around, high five. This is way better. So we're going to do a practice run, okay? So somebody has just come out of the water. You ready? Go. Yeah, nice. All right. Excellent. All right. That's good. You guys are amazing. Okay, so I want to drift into something a little bit serious before we get into this. Actually, it's a lot bit serious, okay? But I think the church does a poor job of addressing things in culture, all right? Now, I don't think we need to address everything in culture, but I think we need to address them when they're relevant and they're in what we should be addressing as a church family, okay? Now, I wrote this down. I want to read it so I don't misspeak or anything like that, but I think we need to address what's happening in our country in light of Roe v. Wade this week, okay? So I know this is a difficult topic for a lot of us, but I want to walk through it with you. Now, regardless of what side of this debate you are on, I want you to know, regardless of what I read here, what we think, what you think, I am really glad you're here, and it doesn't matter to me what you believe. It matters to me that you're here and that we want you to feel cared for by Jesus, okay? Can we say that first? Yeah? Okay, good. So I believe God has given us another unique opportunity in light of Roe v. Wade. I think he's given us some very unique opportunities during quarantine, the high racial tension over the last few years, and all of the unrest in our country since 2020. And I'll be honest with you, church, I think the Big C church has blown it. I think some good things have happened. Some things have changed. But there are still way too many churches and quote-unquote Christians who are waging war against the other side, if you will, and just seem to be concerned about their own agenda and their desires, and Roe v. Wade is no exception. Today, I'm giving a talk called Do What Jesus Did, and I think Jesus' foresight to put this on my heart to teach a few years ago is perfect timing. I'm going to share with you what I think Jesus would do in light of Roe v. Wade, but before we do, let me just share a few things with you. In psychology, there's something called motivated reasoning. It's the term used to refer to the way people believe whatever they want to believe and use the flimsiest piece of evidence to justify that belief, even when there's plenty of verified evidence to disprove this. Why would I tell you that? Because whichever side you're on, you believe this for a reason, regardless if you have a mountain of evidence or the flimsiest of evidence. So I am not here to change your mind on this topic, whatever it is. But I want to tell you where people land on this. And a lot of times we're really frustrated and angry when someone doesn't see our viewpoint. And statistically, I cannot change your mind with facts. You can't change mine with facts because that's how we are as human beings. City Life is completely pro-life because God is pro-life. He calls us to protect the sanctity of life. But I also want to share just some of the reality of the truth with you. It has seemed that the church and culture have been at odds about abortion for so long, and I just want to share with you simple things of why the church has taken the position that it has taken, and I mean the church around the world. When, you can find this on their website, but when Planned Parenthood started, their founder, Margaret Sanger, practiced what's called eugenics, which is a selection of only certain people that should have children. This is a direct quote from their website. It says that Sanger aligned herself with white supremacist values, and in doing so, she undermined reproductive freedom and caused irreparable damage to the health and lives of generations of Black people, Latino people, indigenous people, immigrants, people with disabilities, people with low incomes, and many others from their website. So this didn't start as a choice for women. It started as a project to rid society of certain people. One of the other reasons is because 63 million babies have been aborted in the last 49 years. And in a study released in May of this year, only 1% of abortions are due to rape and under 1/2 are due to incest. Church, this has become an issue of fighting for right. The church is not supposed to be involved in a fight for right. The church is to be involved in doing what Jesus would have done. And here's what I think Jesus would have done. So this isn't the time for the church to take a victory lap with its fist in the air to show that we won. It's a time for a walk of mercy next to the people hurting the most right now. Jesus would walk to the woman who has had an abortion or even a few and regrets it every day. The woman who missed out on being a grandma due to a choice made earlier in their life. The woman or girl who is planning on having an abortion now and it's illegal in her state. He would walk right next to her saying, hey, let me help you figure out what you need to do next. Jesus would be merciful and walk right next to the protester who was screaming and spitting in his face in light of the overturned decision, as well as the protester who was screaming and spitting in his face before this decision was made, saying that it needed to change. The reason why I think the church has a unique opportunity right now is that Jesus would have responded and ran to the hurting people on both sides of this issue. He is calling us to do the same, church. Our world needs to see something different. They need to see what Jesus would actually do. Let's go and be these people to the places that we live, work, learn, and play. And let's actually do what Jesus would have done. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes so we can pray for this deeply moving, emotional, and destructive issue in our country right now. God, as we get into, I think, probably one of the most timely messages that we could have right now is doing what you did, Jesus. I pray that we would step outside of our personal feelings and the things that we would deem important right now and just try to put ourselves in the place of where you're at. I'm reminded of the story, Jesus, in Scripture where the Pharisees brought a nearly naked woman to you and said, hey, we caught her in the act of adultery. The law says we should stone her to death. What do you say? Jesus' response was, well, whoever of you doesn't have any sin, go ahead and throw the first stone at her. I'm reminded of the story that God, as Jesus knelt back down in the dirt, they left one by one, and he was only standing there with this woman, and he said, hey, where are they? Do they not accuse you? She said, no, and he said, neither do I, but go and sin no more. This is the posture and humility of Jesus. Did it matter to him that she was wrong and caught? It mattered to him to care for her soul. It mattered to him to come alongside of her in the most humiliating and devastating and hurtful time in her life, proclaim mercy and grace to her, but also tell her the truth. Lord, let us be those people. I pray for our hearts, however they're moving right now, agreement or disagreement with this. I pray, God, that we would just see that this is your heart, Jesus. As we move into the rest of our talk today, I pray that we would truly see how it is that you would respond to this, Lord. We love you and we ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. Thank you, guys. So we started this series several weeks ago called Practicing the Way, and the reason why we did this is because we identified there's a gap in between where people believe in Jesus and actually follow Jesus, and that gap in there is called spiritual formation. So we want to throw this slide up to you because we're teaching through these three first initial things. Here's what we're actually been covering. In order to become an apprentice of Jesus, you have to order your life around three principles. Those principles are to be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what he did. Now, we've already taught through the first two. Today, we're actually addressing that do what he did. Now, I want you to think about sitting there as a follower of Jesus, and I'm telling you that you're supposed to do what Jesus did, okay? In your mind, you're probably like, I don't even know how that is possible. Well, it's not as difficult as you might think. We're going to walk through that, and we're going to see what this meant today. But I think the timeliness of this, as we're walking through a very difficult time culturally in our city, in our state, this is more important than ever that we understand what he means by this, okay? Now, we've taught through being with Jesus and becoming like him, but today we're going to talk about what he did. Before we see what that means, let's see who Jesus actually was, okay? He was born in a small town to a young virgin girl named Mary. This was called the Immaculate Conception. We don't have time to go into that today, but we don't hear anything about him until he's about 12 years old, where he's actually, his parents can't find him, they're freaking out, and he's actually teaching in the synagogue, which would have been very radical and not normal of that day because only the most highly esteemed teachers taught in the synagogue. And Jesus, as a 12-year-old, I'm sure, was putting the hurt on those dudes. They probably wanted him out of there as fast as he could. But around 30, he comes on the scene publicly, and he unfolds this baptism scene where he goes up to John the Baptizer, and he says, okay, I'm here. I want you to baptize me. And John's like, I can't baptize you. I'm not even worthy to tie your shoe. He's like, no, come on, fulfill the prophecy. So John the Baptist baptizes Jesus. This dove ascends, and it rests on Jesus, and you hear this voice from heaven that says, this is my son in whom I am well pleased. And this is the launch to his public ministry. Jesus then starts healing people, casting out demons, recruiting apprentices, and then teaching in the synagogues because he is, in fact, a teacher. The religious leaders hated Jesus because he was changing the paradigm of what it meant to be a follower. This is what we're trying to do with this series and with these practices. Because I think a lot of times we think being a follower is being faithful to being here on Sunday, and we love that. We want you to be here. Faithful to maybe even being in a City Life community, faithful to giving, faithful to serving. All those things are true, but there's so much more that Jesus expects of us to do as he has told us to follow him. So he was shifting a paradigm, and they hated him for it. He was here to interrupt the system of animal sacrifice and no personal access to God by becoming the final sacrifice. Jesus came to pay that final price of sin by the most excruciating and humiliating way to die, and it was death on a cross. So Jesus died. He was buried in a tomb. He came back to life 3 days later. He gave a final commission to his apostles, and he spent about 40 more days on earth, and then he ascended into heaven to return for us again one day. And this is in a really, really small nutshell who Jesus was. Now, there's a lot of debate around what we're teaching today about us doing what Jesus did, because a lot of people will look at this and go, well, of course Jesus can be perfect. He was here as God in the flesh, right? So here's the two opposing viewpoints. He really was God in the flesh, and of course he didn't sin because he was just wrapped in flesh. The other side is he gave up his right to be God when he came to earth to walk in the flesh. Now, what we believe is what the Bible says was he was fully God and fully man here in the flesh. But let me pose something to you. Imagine you're stuck in a situation where from the outside you feel and look powerless, but internally you know that if you said one word, one thought, moved one tiny muscle, all of it could go away and boom, it could go your way. That's what Jesus walked around on earth with. I want to make sure you understand that, okay? Was he wrapped in flesh? Yes. Was he fully God as well as fully man? Yes. But I think it would have been far more difficult to live like that, because at any moment, he could have changed the course of history because he was God. And he could have said, all right, there's a different way. We don't have to do this. These people don't appreciate what I'm doing. These people are accusing me of stuff I've never done. I have to carry the weight of all their sin. I've never even sinned before. Like, he literally could have said any of that, but he didn't. So I think he had a far more difficult way of going, knowing all of this power is literally at his fingertips. And that submission to God the Father to come and pay that final payment in sacrifice. Man, to me, that makes my respect in the authority of Jesus so much higher, knowing he could have just done this at a moment's notice. But he went all the way to the cross, never even defending himself, never even proving he was God. He just said, that's what you said about me. I don't have to say it. So I want you to understand why this is really important for you and I to get. I want to look at Hebrews chapter 4, because this is a key and crucial verse in the life of us actually trying to do what Jesus did. So if you have your Bibles, I want you to go to Hebrews 4. We're going to start in verse 14, and I want to just read just a few here, okay? Now, if you've been in church anytime at all, if you know your Bible, you know this verse, these verses, okay? So here's what it is. Look at verse 14. It says, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast to our confession. Let me tell you why that's important. In the sacrificial system of the day, if I would go to the tent, the high priest, this was not a job you chose. You were actually in a lineage, and it was chosen for you. That high priest lived in that temple setting, learned all of the law, and was literally bred to do where I bring an animal sacrifice to him. He literally goes into the presence of God, and he sacrifices this animal for the sin of my family, the sin of the nation, okay? That high priest did not know what I went through on a daily basis. Does that make sense? Because we don't live the same life. Jesus, why this is so important, we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast to our confession. That's our high priest. Now, keep reading. We do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin. That's why this is really important. Jesus, you have no idea what I'm going through. No, actually I do. I lived on earth in the flesh and was tempted in every way you are. I just never sinned. I know exactly what you're going through. Church, do you think Jesus didn't have great stress and anxiety and worry when he was on his way to the cross? Do you think that Jesus didn't have this insatiable desire for something to change, for it to not go the way that it was laid out? In fact, we read this account where he was literally sweating drops of blood saying, God, if there's any other way, come on. But then that statement's followed up, but not my way, your way. This is why this is so important for you to understand. Jesus is not some out-of-touch religious leader who doesn't know what we're dealing with. I used to think when I got married to my wife, when I looked around my house I lived in growing up, my parents had like a few cars. We had a motorhome at one time. We had a boat at one time. My dad had a motorcycle. He had a hot rod. We had tons of food in the pantry, fully furnished house. I thought that stuff just magically showed up when you got married. It doesn't. It really sucks. You have to work for all that crap. So as I'm talking to my parents about this, they understand what I'm going through, because guess what they moved into? An empty apartment at one time. And one vehicle to share between them, and hardly any food to eat. And so they knew what I was going through, and they're saying, okay, well, here's how we did that. That was helpful to me. But if my parents would have inherited something and they never had to work for that, I don't relate to them because I'm out here working for it. When Jesus says, hey, I was tempted in every single point, you are. I understand what you're dealing with. Man, this should take your relationship with Jesus and just solidify that all the more, right? Now look at the next verse. Therefore, let us approach the throne of grace with boldness so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in time of need. Let me tell you why. Not only is that one of the most incredible verses in all of Scripture, you have to understand the verse before that in order to understand this one, okay? Because my parents shared a bit of the same journey, I can run to them and I will receive help and mercy in my time of need on a personal level down here. It is the same way with you and God. But I think sometimes we're like, no, I can't run to him. I'm not going to give him my pride. He doesn't understand my problems. Yes, he does. In fact, he actually says, run. Don't waste time. Don't sit and think. Run to me. Let me give you what you're looking for, which is grace and mercy and help in your time of need. Isn't it the weird irony how we delay so often actually going after Jesus when we have problems? We're like, we'll come over here and we'll talk to this friend, and we'll come over here and we'll talk to this friend. We'll spend a lot of time by ourselves. We'll actually pray. We'll read our Bible, and we'll never even talk to the one who's like, hey, woohoo, over here, run, come on. I'm waiting for you. We're like, I'll be there, Jesus, in a while, maybe. Like, this is why this is so crucial for you to understand these two verses of Scripture. He knows what you're going through, and he tells you to run to him. And I don't know why no one in this place is saying amen, because that is some good news. So let me restate all of that one more time. No, just the short stuff. Jesus knows what you're dealing with and going through, and he tells you to run to him for help, grace, and mercy. Amen. Okay, good. Now I know you're listening. Now, Jesus goes and he spends the night in prayer to see who God wants him to recruit as his apprentices. Have you ever caught that in Scripture? This further solidifies Jesus in the flesh. Jesus himself went and spent all night on a mountain praying, God, who do you want me to choose as my disciples? If Jesus took all night, it's going to take us about 7 or 8 weeks, would be my guess. But this is what he does. The Gospels record how this went. He was walking by the sea and saw 2 brothers who were fishermen, Simon Peter and his brother Andrew. And a little further down the shore, he called 2 more brothers, kind of business partners with them, John and James. Why is this significant? Well, in this culture, they understood Jesus as a rabbi and a teacher. His statement to them was, come follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Now, that statement sounds odd to us today, but what it meant back then is, I will make you an intellectual person who captures the imagination of men and teaches them how to live in this way. So these fishermen, common, ordinary, blue-collar workers like myself, were getting tapped on the shoulder to come and sit under the rabbi. Now, how this went was, in academic world, only the top students got tapped on the shoulder to follow a rabbi, not these common blue-collar workers. So the fact that Jesus was going around and recruiting people who are completely out of society's norm, I think makes this so much more incredible for us. You know why? Because it doesn't matter how special or unspecial we are. Jesus calls and recruits everyone to him to receive this salvation. So, he was with his 12. He was teaching them. They watched him heal people, raise people from the dead, teach and do various other miracles. And Jesus has his apprentices under his belt for about a year. And then he says something incredible. Now it's your turn. Now here's where we take away an argument from any of you who are still willing to argue with me that you can't do what Jesus did. These people were nothing special. They might not have even had a year of training under their belt. And God, in the flesh, as Jesus says, I'm going to give you the power to go heal people, to cast demons out, and do miracles. And they went. Maybe we can do what Jesus did. Let's look at Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter 10. We're skipping through some of these verses, but we're going to start in verse 1. Summoning his 12 disciples, he gave them authority over unclean spirits to drive them out and to heal every disease and sickness. That's incredible to me. Hey, you've been following me. You've watched me do this. I'm giving you the authority to do it now. Look down at verse 5. Jesus sent out these 12 after giving them instructions. Don't take the road that leads to any Gentiles. Don't enter any Samaritan towns. Instead, go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, very important phrase, proclaim the kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you received, freely give. Look down at verse 16. Look, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves. He's warning them where he's sending them. He's giving them a posture of how to act with all of this power. Okay, look at it again. I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Sheep are absolutely defenseless against wolves, right? Not a chance. Therefore, be as shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves, because you guys are wielding a lot of power, if you will. Now, why would we do this? Go back up to verse 8. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with leprosy, drive out demons. How many of you are metaphorically pooping your pants right now? Like, wait, you want me to do that stuff? Nah, I'm good. But let me give you the why behind it. Look at the next part. Freely you received, freely give. Even though it's the same word, those two definitions of freely are very different. Let me give them to you. Freely received means free of charge, without payment, undeserved, and the root of it is a gift. Okay? So here's what Jesus is saying. In salvation, I freely gave to you. It was undeserved. It was free of charge. It was without payment. It was a gift. You received that. Now go freely give it. Here's what that means. It is a gift or a present, but it's a gift offered in expression of honor. It's a gift offered in expression of honor. My life's work is to obey Jesus' final command. Go as you go. Do you notice that's what he told his disciples? As you go. This becomes an entire lifestyle for me. If on my tombstone it says, always pursue Jesus until the day he died, I will be as happy as can be. But if it would say, well, he started strong. After that whole 10-year thing, they sent him away for 5 days, and he just lost it after that. That would be a tragedy. But I think a lot of times, like, we love the receive, but man, it's the give we have a really hard time with, isn't it? You want to know why? Because it's an interruption to our lifestyle. It's an interruption to our lifestyle. If my wife and I are talking through our weekly calendar, I'm like, hey, do you want to do dinner on Wednesday night? She's like, we can't do dinner on Wednesday night. At 6 o'clock, it's when we cast out demons. We can't do Thursday either. That's when we heal people. You know that. Like, this is a whole lifestyle. It's going to interrupt your schedule. So like God always does, I try to do between 30 minutes and an hour of a prayer walk every morning. Friday morning, I was out on, it rounded out to be about an hour. I'm praying, and I'm like, all right, Lord, I'm going to preach this on Sunday. Do I live like this? Do I allow interruptions in my life? So my house sits here, and my neighbor's is back here, and as I turn the corner, as I'm praying, my neighbor's in his driveway. Great guy, had great conversations with him, helped me take a tree down in my backyard, love the guy. We've had conversations about Jesus. It's amazing. But I'm on my prayer walk, and I don't want to talk to Bill. And Jesus is like, oh, yeah? Okay. So I stopped and talked to Bill, and we had a great conversation. And 30 minutes later, I was resuming my prayer walk, but guess what? Bill's here this morning. Isn't that cool? And so later on in the day, I got back to my meetings and finished my prayer walk, and Tyler and I, we go to a car wash, and I'm washing my car, and he's washing his car, and as I'm washing my car, I hear the automatic car wash saying, exit now, exit now, exit now. So I just peek my head in because it's super annoying, and there's a lady sitting in her car not moving. So she comes next to me, and she goes, hey, I don't have a phone. Can you help me? And I was like, sure. So I dial this number of the car wash owner, and 30 minutes later, we've got her taken care of into the car wash. It didn't work because I was resetting, and I think I have a job there now. I'm not sure, but I was actually working and helping, and I got 3 cars through, but for it, I got a free wash out of it. It's amazing, right? And Jesus was like, this is what I mean. You allow it to interrupt your schedule. Bill, at the end of our conversation, was like, wow, this is so weird we're talking today. And something to the effect of, God sent you. That lady, as she's pulling into the car wash, said, God sent you to me today. I said, yeah, you're right, he did. When we're going to live and do what Jesus did, we have to allow our schedule to be interrupted. We have to actually do what he did. Jesus was so unhurried in his life that nothing interrupted what God the Father wanted him to do. And we can't live any differently, church. So what are the things that Jesus did on this earth? He prayed and spent time with his Father. He read the scriptures. He preached, which means for us that's sharing the good news. He healed people. He cast out demons. He apprenticed people, and he ordered his entire life around the mission that God gave him. So I want you to think about these things in the relation to your life. How in the world does this work for us today? Quite simply, this becomes a whole life strategy for you. Whole life. Long play. Immediate and long play. Your entire life actually gets reordered around the idea of what Jesus tells us to live like. So, I want to give you something practically to actually be able to leave with. I've been talking about this 10 minutes of silence and this 10 minutes of prayer. So I challenged my community with it, and honestly, I took the challenge very, very lightly. I thought for sure, like, man, my City Life community, they're going to jump all over this. It's going to be super easy. The first week, literally nobody did this. 10 minutes were so daunting to them that they didn't even try. So after I berated them, the next time we met, just kidding. After I was like, okay, guys, tell me the problem. What's going on? Why can you not do this? And everybody universally said, it's so hard to just be quiet. I said, I know, it is. But one of the top practices Jesus did was silence and solitude. We live in a very, very noisy society. Most of the time, church, induced by ourselves. Most of the time, our noise is induced by us. So we tried some different things. I said, give me a minute. I don't care. 2, 3, 5, 7, work to 10. Now, for those of us in this room that allow a lot of noise in our lives, 1 minute, you don't even get through the first part of your thoughts. So here's what I want you to try this week. I think I can biblically prove morning is the best time for this, but if nighttime needs to be the time for you, then just please do it. Lunchtime, I don't really care. It's best if you can do this in the morning. If you can, before you touch your phone, before you do anything, if you can just sit and as hard as you can try to clear your mind, here's some of the things that I think will help you. As the thoughts start to come in, what you have to do that day, things that you didn't finish yesterday, go, God, what do you want me to hear from you? And it just silences those things. And you can sit, and you can listen. And they'll start again. And you go, God, what do you want me to do today? And they'll subside. And then you can listen. And then follow that up as many times as you need to, but start to work through silence. You know why? Because this is where Jesus speaks to you. He speaks through his word. He speaks through when you listen. And then he speaks through when your prayer conversation with him is followed up by that 10 minutes. Look, I could pull my whole community up here and let them give testimony of how incredible this is in their life. And I know that sounds so weird. 10 minutes of silence, is that? Yes, it is. Church, God's calling us to something different. Today, he's calling us to do what Jesus did. If you want to hear from him and order your life around this, you have to be able to hear from him. I'm going to close with this. John 16. It says, indeed, an hour is coming and has come when each of you will be scattered to his own home and you will leave me alone. Yet I'm not alone because the Father is with me. I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. You will have suffering in this world, but be courageous. I have conquered the world. Yes. Another version says, I've overcome the world. That word conquered or overcome literally means to carry off the victory. So when Jesus ascended to heaven, he carried off the victory on his shoulders of conquering the world. What that gives us is peace. As I can listen, my peace is in him. It's not in the turmoil of the world. So I can listen and I can come alongside of people and I can be there for them and I can give mercy and love and grace in people's time of need because I am receiving it myself, just like Jesus tells me to. So let's do what Jesus did starting today. Deal? All right, let's close our eyes. God, we love you. We thank you so much for who you are, your graciousness as an incredibly good God. I can't tell you how many times I have blown it trying to do what you do, Jesus. Yet you continue to forgive me. You continue to give me grace. You continue to give me mercy, and you continue to let me be your servant, the pastor here at City Life Church. God, these are incredibly gracious things by you. But somewhere along the way, I figured out that if I would just be obedient to you, these things will happen. The years of my life, I was found fighting against you and not wanting to do what you did. Man, those were the years of misery for me. So, Father, I pray that the people sitting here today, the people watching online, that you would capture their hearts. Let them just be captivated by your grace and mercy, Jesus. Let them know that it doesn't matter how many times they've turned their back on you, how many times they've walked away, how many times they've attempted to do this, that you are still here still arms wide open, sitting on the throne, ready to give grace and mercy and help in our time of need. I pray against the enemy who wants us to believe lies, that you don't want anything to do with us, that you're mad at us. Those are full and complete lies from the pit of hell. I pray today would be different. Something would just click in our hearts. Something would just shift in our minds to go, man, I don't want to waste any more time. I'm in. I'm all in. I want to do what you did, Jesus. And I pray that we would start that process of ordering our life around you, Jesus. The best way to do that is in community, church. So if you today have decided, hey, I'm all in, you can't do this alone. This is why we meet in communities. This is why we do this together, because my community comes around me when I need it, and I come around them when they need it. So, Father, I pray today be a marking moment in the life of our church. For those of you that are sitting here today and you don't have a relationship with Jesus, we have people in the back that their whole goal every week is just to pray with you, just to talk with you. They live for this. They love it. Go back and have a conversation with them. Just say, hey, I don't know what I believe about Jesus, but can we talk? They would love that. So here, just a second when we pray, just head to the back. For those of you that are followers of Jesus, and you want to see something different in your life, you want to orient your life around it, but you need help and you need prayer, don't know where to start, head back there too. Father, we love you and we can't wait to celebrate these baptisms. In Jesus' name, amen. Go ahead and stand. So we were going to read, Elijah's going to read these stories, but we're going to do April's live here starting out. So let's give it up for April Hornaday. Nice and warm, right?
Yes.
How long have you guys been at City Life?
About
4 years or so? Okay. So April wrote a small novel, which is why we're going to do hers live. Is that yours on? Okay, I'm standing in water, so I'm probably about to die, but I'll see y'all in heaven. April had some church upbringing. She had a lot of influence by your mom and your grandpa, specifically,
my grandma.
Your grandma and your grandpa, and your mom. And so right here. And so to fast forward, there was a lot of things that happened in April's life that induced deep depression. And a couple of them, just saying, were.
I'm sorry?
What induced deep depression?
Oh, my father's accidental overdose when I was 3, combined with a sexual assault when I was a teenager.
To back pain, where they had you on opioids that you refused to take, but you had to because you couldn't function.
Yes.
All of those led to a really deep depression. The confusing thing for April is she had been baptized as a child, but couldn't understand what was happening inside of her, why she couldn't make things right with Jesus, so to speak. They came to City Life and we started having conversations about this. And when her aunt passed, correct? She watched through that and realized who Jesus was, truly surrendered and accepted Jesus as her Savior, and that is why she's getting baptized today. So let's give it up for April. There's a lot more to cover to that story, but we hit the highlights. So, April, do you know Jesus as your Savior?
Yes, I do.
Are you ready to live like He did?
Absolutely.
All right, this is Danny. Growing up, I knew about God from friends, TV, and other ways, but he was not a big part of my life. I didn't have the kind of family who went to church or prayed together. It was more like the kind of family that just survived each other. I do remember thinking, it's not supposed to be this way. I always felt like something was missing, like a giant hole inside that I could never fill, and I didn't want that for my kids. I want them to always know they have people in their lives that love them and a God that loves them even more. My beautiful wife, April, helped me come to know Jesus. She started taking the girls to her mom's church and asked me to come with them, but I was still in selfish mode. I didn't feel like getting up that early. At this point, I was still thinking it was about me. Well, she continued to go week after week. She was reading us devotionals. She was getting into God's Word, and she was changing. She was less stressed. She was quicker to apologize, and she was happy, truly happy. To be honest, I was jealous. I wanted the same thing. I wanted to be happy, not sometimes happy, but truly happy. So another week rolled around, and like the weeks before, she asked me if I wanted to come to church with them, and to her surprise, I said yes. That was the day my life changed. Started going to church with them regularly, and I started reading the Bible and praying more and more. Since then, we started volunteering and tithing regularly. Having joined a community group and Bible studies, I attended a men's lamplighter, 48 Hours with Jesus weekend, and then volunteered as part of the team for the entire weekend at the next lamplighter weekend. It's amazing how good your life can be when you put your faith in Jesus. One more little story before I conclude. I was driving down the road one day, and the story came across the radio, and it got me thinking. It made me feel hopeless inside. It was a sad story. I can't go into detail because it'll take too long. But the point of the story is, as I'm sitting there in my truck driving down the road, I just couldn't shake this hopeless feeling, and the next thing I know, a paper comes flying out of a stack of papers on my dash. I mean, it wasn't on the top, and it was wedged in there. Somehow, the way it happened, I didn't know what it was, but it stuck to my window, and when I looked over, it said, "You have hope now." This is Brandy. I never went to church growing up. I didn't grow up around Christians. I couldn't have told you what it meant to be a Christian or even if God was real. Why didn't I feel him, or why didn't I deserve being loved or accepted from the ones I loved? First, by my father, who never claimed me, and my mother, who always chose the men in her life over me. Then I met the love of my life, my children's father, and I thought this was finally the acceptance and love I was missing and deserved. But during the next 23 years of our life together, that was not what I felt at all. In 2014, I lost my grandfather, the one who raised me. His death put me into a deep depression that spiraled me down this dark path that resulted in losing my children. How did I get here? I didn't recognize who I was anymore. I became empty. I was a complete mess with no direction on how to get back my life. But what I didn't know was that this all was a blessing in disguise. God had a plan for me and my family. It may not have been the way that I wanted it to go, but it still ended up with the same results. I was reunited with my children. He took us out of an unhealthy situation, and in this process gave us an even larger family with so much love. I started going to church. I surrendered and accepted Jesus into my life as my Lord and Savior. Then God started mending and healing the relationships between my mother and I that was a miracle in itself. And the difference with my life now is that I feel God's love, forgiveness, and acceptance. He accepts me for who I am, despite all of my insecurities and fears. And He is slowly changing me as I learn to trust Him more and more. I am more than the choices I have made or the problems I have created. I've been remade, but I'm not perfect. Those shoes are filled by Jesus. I'm a work in progress. We all are. Ultimately, I know that this isn't what other people think of me that counts, but it's what God thinks of me, and nothing in the world can stop Him from loving me. This is Aaron. I thought I had gotten saved at a young age through the typical fear methods of summer camp, but came to realize last Easter Sunday I was missing some and gave my life to Christ. Since then, it's been nothing but flying cupcakes and unicorns from that moment on. Seriously, life since salvation has shown me a greater peace and understanding of God's Word. All right, this is Cody. God's been there my whole life. I just didn't know how to comprehend Him. My salvation started in prison, where I tried to join a certain gang in doing drugs. It literally became so overwhelming, too much trouble and drugs again, except it was in prison instead of the streets, that I prayed to God, please get me out of this before something bad happens. That's when I realized He was there, because He made it happen just hours later. Now, on May 11th at 7 a.m., sitting in that little diner with Mike, Jordan, and Joe, that was the day I truly came to Him. I gave Jesus my life that day.
All right. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. Hey, come talk to these guys. Tell them welcome to the family and that what you heard of their story, but just come up and show them some love. Love you guys. See you next week.